All right, here's some kite examples. So find the measure of the numbered angles. So for number 16, we know that the diagonals of a kite are perpendicular. So angle 1 must be 90 degrees, right? That has to be a right angle. Now, we know a few things with the kite that we didn't have a theorem for, because this point here, we'll call it A, is equidistant from two sides of this particular angle here. That must mean it's on the angle bisector, right? And you could say the same thing for this angle here, right? For angle A. So basically, this here and this here are congruent, and so are this and this. All right. So that means this is 22 down here, right? This is a right angle because those lines are perpendicular. And so that means that 22 and angle 2 must be complementary, right? Because they're the two acute angles of a right triangle. And so we can say, we can just do 90 minus 22, and that gets us the measure of angle 2, which is 68. All right. Okay, now number 18. Here we can kind of use some deduction to figure this out as well. So what I know is if I make a diagonal there across the kite in that way, where I have the two sets of non-congruent consecutive sides on either side, then I have two congruent triangles by side, right? Reflexive property for the diagonal, and then this one with this one, this one with this one, right? So by side, those triangles are congruent, meaning that their angle 1 and angle 2 must be congruent, right, by CPCTC. So in a kite, the angles that are included between the two non-consecutive, the two non-congruent sides are congruent, okay? So let me read that. So the angles between the two non-congruent sides are congruent, okay? So this angle here is not necessarily congruent with this angle here, right? We can't say that those are congruent. All right. So 1 and 2 are congruent, and we could do the bisector and do it that way, but we'll just use what we know about a quadrilateral, which is the angles add up to 360, right? So I can say 360 plus measure of angle 1 plus measure of angle 2 plus, let me start all over. 360 equals the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 plus 54 plus 90, right? And then we know that these two are congruent. So let's just call one of them x, and the other one would also be x, right? So if I have x plus x, that's going to equal 2x, right? So 2x plus 54 plus 90 is 144 equals 360. Then we could subtract 144 from both sides, and we get 2x equals 360 minus 144, 216. And then we divide by 2, and we get x equals 108. All right, so so each of those angles would be 108, right? So measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle 2 is equal to 108. All right, that's how it's done. All right, so let's run through these a little more quickly now that we know some of these properties. So measure of angle 1 and angle 3 are perpendicular because the diagonals, since it's a kite, diagonals of a kite are perpendicular. So measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle 3 is equal to 90 degrees. Okay, and so this would also be 90, and this would also be 40, right? Because we know that these two angles are congruent. Because this diagonal is the bisector, right? The diagonal that crosses from the angle that's formed by two congruent sides to the other angle that's formed by two congruent sides. That diagonal is a bisector of both those angles, right? So that means both these are 40, and so that means angle 2, since this is a right triangle here, angle 2 is going to be complementary with 40. So 90 minus 40 equals 50, right? So measure of angle 2 equals 50 degrees. All right, number 22. So angle 1, that's easy. That's a right angle. Since it's a kite, right? Diagonals bisect one another, or excuse me, diagonals are perpendicular, I should say. All right, we know that these angles are congruent, so angle 3 is 38. And this, angle 5 and angle 53 are the same as well, right? So angle 5 is 53 degrees. Okay, angle 4 is complementary with 53, so I can just do 90 minus 53, right? And that gives me 37. So measure of angle 4 is 37. And last but not least, angle 2 is going to be, since this is a right triangle here, is going to be complementary with 38. So I can just do 90 minus 38, and that gives me 52. So measure of angle 2 is equal to 52.